Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tug of Heart. This is Lori. I'm here with my twinner, Leroy. How you doing, Leroy?
Hey Lori, how are you? I'm doing good.
Pretty good. So today I am going to talk a little bit about imminence. This came from a talk that I thought I was going to have to do solo, and I was kind of in that mindset at the time. I think we're a couple weeks outside of it. And I had taken it at the time as kind of, just a sign that maybe this is what I should be talking about, since it's been on my mind and since Leroy happens to not be here today. So I was like, I'll just assume that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull this up real quick. Where I was coming from was this idea that imminence is the hardest to grasp basically when you're right in the middle of it. And I had learned a lot about this with my last day with Seth. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, Seth is my darling boy, who just over a year ago we lost to a tumor in the brain, DIPG it's called. And this lesson that I'm talking about, it's grown since that time that I had to reflect on the day. And this is kind of a little bit of a vision. Leroy, you don't mind if I take the time to just go through it, because it's a little...
Lori,
Okay.
I'm listening to you. I love it.
So one of the things that I learned about is that vigilance, I don't know if I would say, at least hypervigilance can sometimes alter our ability to have a look at the wholeness of life. And that's because there's a boundary that surrounds it that's kind of invisible, I guess. And when we cross that line in vigilance, we go from being very careful to wariness. And so what had me thinking this the other day, a couple weeks ago, was the shootings, all the just intense fighting I feel among just different sides in our country, the wars going on, and so on and so forth, just feeling the weight of it. And to me, it seems like there's just like the world just seems filled with a lot of darkness lately. And at least that's what seems to be echoed, I guess, from, the TV, what you hear in the grocery store, stuff like that. This is what they seem to be reporting. And I haven't decided if I believe it or not, if it's as bad as what people say, or if it's kind of the same as it's always been, which is kind of where I lie. But I do think when times are like this, unease can start to feel like it's bigger than hope, and fear is bigger than promise. And when these two are, I guess, at odds, it gets really hard to see things for what they are, and good choices become even more important. And good choices come from being able to have a clear look at what is going on and in the directions that matter the most. I'm going to read this next part in the interest of time. Kind of read. I'll skip read a little bit, and then we'll talk a couple minutes about imminence. Sometimes where to look in the midst of tough times becomes the most difficult choice to make. Among the many inner influences, two that come into mind are habit and loyalty. In terms of loyalty, it comes down to feeling as if it would be abandoning the suffering to be optimistic. So what I was trying to say there was, like, if the whole world feels like they're just struggling and trying to get along, you're kind of odd man out if you're optimistic. Like you're not being loyal to the rest of the world, and that comes into play for me, anyways. Like the optimistic have failed to grasp the real worry among neighbor, or the true vulnerability that moves about in more freedom than we would like it to have. To choose optimism in the worst of conditions can also flag naivety, or worse, a type of coldness in the perceiver. And this just adds to the unease that's among those that are already so restless. So when Seth was in his final moments, we knew it was imminent. And there was this distinct moment where things were definitely moving, had definitely changed. And we knew, I mean, we knew where we stood, hours, minutes, when you get there. All the nurses were bustling about, nervously. They called the doctors came in, and his head doctor leaned in the door, looked at us, looked at Seth, and I won't, without going into detail what was happening, she just said, soon now, and kind of nodded her head at us. So that's where I got this idea, as I said on the last podcast, soon and now. And so she's telling us it's imminent. And from the beginning of time, people have tried to define, I guess, what imminence is. And so I'll just jump off the ledge with you there, Leroy, without dragging on with the rest of what I said. But the fact is, when we are so distracted by something is imminent, and so we dive into it feels as if it's the end of the world, and we dive right into that role that it's in the end of the world. We end up almost acting out what we believe we should be doing in that, instead of looking around soberly and saying, is this really where we are? Is there any fight left? Is there any hope left? Am I seeing things right? Or am I believing everybody else? And people do act a little more wild when there's fear, and when we think when we say imminent and we believe it's happening right now, we get a little crazy, or we think, if I need something, I'm going to go get it now because this is imminent. And that's what my point was, Leroy, was that it just obscures the way that we see things. And I'll start with that. You can tell me what you think, and then I can tell you after kind of what happened with Seth, if I can get my wits together to do that. It was a long, dragged out intro. Sorry about that.
No, thank you for sharing. That's a very challenging and a very tender reality. It's a tough memory to bring to the table, and for you to share it is amazing. I think imminence is a tough one. The minute we're born, our death is imminent.
That's right.
We're just looking for a place to park it. A place in time to park that. Heartbreak, imminent. Recovery, imminent. New love, imminent. And so you start to realize that while so many things in our life, they're imminent, there's a huge role we play in participating in the imminence.
Right.
And so I can't, I want, because we're twins, I want to speak intelligently about Seth, and I can't. But when you understand imminence, not just when she leaned in and said soon now, but the imminence was acknowledged early on.
Right. Prior to, it was 9 months before that.
You have like
imminence then.
You had an imminence leading up to an imminence. And God bless you, Lori. You really took that time to find out a lot about yourself and a lot about your child in the imminence. You didn't throw your hands up and be like, here we are. You participated, and my heart breaks. You ran yourself ragged for, something like 36 weeks of just brutality. And, I think that while things are imminent, the only thing that I could contribute And it's like with the biggest of lessons from my older sister, who happens to be my twin, it would be, what role do we want to play in our imminence? You know, because the role that we play is what reveals character and introduces words that we didn't know we were capable of, like legacy. And so we start to uncover more about ourselves by, and I hate to say this because there is no acceptance, but there's a certain amount of acceptance. Mm-hmm. And now we can be productive within the boundaries of imminence.
Yeah, you.
That sounds crazy, but I'm trying to.
Oh, you actually you ended up reaching more quickly than it took me months after the fact to come to that conclusion, because I think I missed something in Seth's final moments, and this was one of the things that I had realized. Because I was told it was imminent, so even as it was happening, I fell into the role of the grieving mom. And a whole lot more is said about this. I'll actually, maybe I'll post this on our page. I'm not sure yet. And so what happened is I had kind of likened it to like the Pieta, the Michelangelo carving of Mary with Jesus in the hands. And so I kind of did that. You know, whether you're religious or not, this is how we picture if you're in the imminence and you're aware that somebody's going to die, they're going to die in your arms. So we reenact that, right? And the thing that I remember about it, and keep in mind, this is kind of a long piece that I had written, was that I'm looking at him as he's passed, and I continue looking at him and kissing him after he's passed. And what happened is, on certain anniversaries, I'll go back to that, because unfortunately, the freshest memory is the most recent, which is his end. I wish the freshest was the first, but it doesn't work that way. It works in reverse, right? So many times when I go, I'm going to cry, but when I go to revisit it, I go right back to that moment, and I see me holding Seth. And at first I begrudged being there. I was like, why should I have to, why go there? And then finally, one time I just stopped fighting it. And I said, you know what? If I'm put back in this place, I'm going to let it be to some good use. And so I had finally reached this place. This is going to sound a little bizarre, where I entered the room and I was just watching myself, watching Seth, and watching Steve as this is unfolding. Because you know what? I'm not going to keep going back and re-entering me and just, the feelings and everything else. But let me be from where I am imminently right now. Let me have a look at how this happened. And in that time, this is going to sound just a little wild, but I realized it might be an opportunity to have gone back. And if I had gone back, I thought, I don't know that I would have looked at him, because I was put in this moment where I'm like, it's imminent, it's happening. And so I'm like looking at Seth, and then it's happened. And so I've fallen into the role of what happens when moms lose their children and they die in their arms. You stare, you kiss, you cry, you bury your head in their chest and weep. And I was doing that, and his little soul had left and could be around the room. And so and this could very well be my imagining. It was kind of like a dream where I see this and I see him hesitating to give me one last look. Sorry. And I don't see it because I'm reenacting what we ought to do when something very bad is imminent, right? But the good thing is, by going back and seeing it, I was able to accomplish something after the fact. It sounds really wild. And I should have just read the whole thing, because it makes it a little more clear. I write a little better than I speak. But anyways, the point is, fast forward to today, and when we say things seem really dark in the world right now, what are we doing? Do we all fall into kind of role-playing the end of times? Let's break windows, let's take stuff, or let's fall to our knees and pray, and let's lock our doors to everybody. Let's take what's ours and hide. Let's fight. let's fight like the Dickens because this is it. Do we all go right into a role we assume we would want to be at that? Or do we just get right back into ourselves and say, you know what? Let's have a look what we're working with. Now, if this is the worst and we're in an imminent moment of the worst that life is today, then have a look around because it may not be at all like what people expect it to be. It may not play out like movies. Like for me, it may not play out like the end of these movies where somebody's cradling somebody as they die, but it may instead be a mom who looks up and actually witnesses that there is something beyond. This is all, this is fiction and reality, what I'm talking about. But do you understand, Leroy, what I'm saying?
I can't even begin to understand what you're saying, Lori, because you literally, I mean, only having lived through something like that.
But I mean, in terms of today, if things are really bad, who do we want to be if not within ourselves during it? Do we want to be like have an out-of-body experience and micromanage ourselves from outside? Not really, probably, right?
Let's take a little breather, because number one, I can see you when we're talking because we're thanks to modern technology. But let me give you another word for imminence, a synonym, if you will. Reality.
Right.
And so imminence and reality are, they're somewhat universal. But I'm going to say that if we don't recognize imminence in its entirety,
right,
we're postponing things like healing, which is imminent. You said something and it stuck with me, and you said, I wish that the first memories were the brightest memories and not the last memories. But the reality is, it's which moments do you reflect on? Because the reality is you're in possession of all of those memories.
Right, right.
And all of them are beautiful, even the challenging ones. Because, as they say, I want to go in my sleep like my grandmother, not like the other 50 people on the bus she was driving. So
it's so bad.
so I say imminence, recognizing pardon me, recognizing that those memories, they're a reality. And you can't keep imminence at bay. You can, but at your own peril.
Right.
So you have to take it, you have to take all of it. And again, Lori, when we have these conversations, we're literally just trying to peel back the undisturbed earth that we've used to cover up stuff. And if we pull away the barrier, so to speak, and we get to the reality or the imminence of what has happened and what remains, you have it all. You have all the memories, and so you should, if you can wrap your mind around that reality, then you can start to enjoy them more, and recognize. I wish that I could remember. I remember breaking up, and with somebody that I was involved with, and it was a breakup where it was imminent, but it was a breakup. But I had been through a breakup before, and I think I may have even said it here in a podcast early in the beginning. Well, that's funny, early in the beginning, but I knew that the healing was imminent.
Yes.
And so I sat back and I had these big, beautiful gates on my home, and I closed them, and I had everything that I would need for 48 hours or 72 hours. You remember this story?
Yes, yes.
And I went in and I sat down at my dining table. I didn't have anything on. and I let myself go to the most uncomfortable places that a breakup will take you. Who's she with? What did I do wrong? Can I change things? Do I really want to change things? You know, and I went through all these different things. And by understanding that imminence, that healing was imminent, might as well just get into it. I cut down what could have been stretched out. I didn't, because I know many people will like busy themselves with the anesthetic of friends, barbecues, new potential dates, you know, new potential companions. Alcohol, absolutely. Yep. And all you're doing is you're just postponing imminence, right. Much like retrieving memories. You're, right. You know, the memories are there and it's imminent that you'll get to them, but why postpone them? You know, why? So this one time, for whatever it's worth, it worked. I just sat down and said, okay, for 3 days, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to go through all the ugly, right. All the regret, right. All the sorrow. Turns out it took like a day. Because after a 24-hour period, staying up late, I literally, and this is going to sound crazy, I was fatigued by the anguish. And when I had run through every possible scenario, I recognized the cycle and I was just revisiting the same memory.
Right, right.
And that was the point where I was like, okay, take a shower, let's go get something to eat. We're done healing here. Because I expedited the imminence of healing.
And this is the thing, this is my point too, because if right now we are, you know, people have said it's been the worst of times since the beginning of time. People have said that the end of the world was imminent since Judaism began, way thousands of years before Christianity. Men have spent thousands of years trying to pinpoint it. They've renamed it. They've made big communities over it, selected and lived it out. Here's the thing, though. They died waiting for a kind of imminence. If we were in it today, I think the approach would be, number one, that pragmatic approach that you seem to have had, where it's like, what are we working with? Okay, so now say the world is worse than it's ever been today, right now. It truly is, and we don't have a way of gauging, but if somebody had full knowledge of everything they could see that it was, then this is where we are. Then we would have to take a look around and be like, what does it look like? What do we do? Okay, at least we know it's the worst it could ever be. So what does cleanup look like? One of the things that you learn in life with age is that life is going to be okay, and you're going to be okay no matter what. Now, say that to the people in Ukraine, Chicago, schools, but I stand by this, and I have my whole life. Even when things are not okay, you will be okay. It is, you will have to reside within yourself during hard times. This is the nature of life. And there's a whole lot of beauty that just is, it extends into the awesome, you know, and part of it is the nature of how it's all put together, including this kind of not knowing in imminence. But what we can do is be within ourselves and be within the world at the same time, and see things for what they are, not for the way we always pictured and imagined and saw a Tom Cruise movie about the end of the world. Don't go reenacting somebody's fiction of what the end looks like. Take a look and say, it's the end. I better help somebody. I'm going to help, and I'm still here. That means I'm here. I have work left to do. And that's it. Which is something I say a lot of. If this is the end, did you check on your neighbors? You know, you said in the last show, did you call those you love? Did you get together again? And if, you know, what do you do with that? So like you said, your relationship was, the end was imminent. Having such incredible information should somehow alter our entire life. What do you do with that? Right?
Well, you write a country song. Live your life like you got one day left to live.
Yep.
I mean, those are really, live your life like you got one day left to live. Or
like you're gonna live forever.
I live like you're dying.
Yeah, all of it.
All of those.
All of the quotes.
So it's funny because in our previous podcast, I said, look how neatly aligned, hesitation, sense of urgency, faith, imminence. This was a perfect segue. Beautiful piece you wrote too. But I mean, they're really very neatly aligned because when we understand imminence, or forget understand it, accept it, now we can move on to better understanding hesitation.
Right. And that comes from soon and now is happening together.
And when you understand hesitation, now we can understand a need for a sense of urgency.
Right. So I'm going to dump you. Okay. Can we zero in on that time now? Is soon and now. Yes. So don't delay the inevitable and live your life. Had you known, I think with age, if me and you saw something was imminent, I think we would exercise a little bit more proaction in it. And, it's something you don't do, but you have a little luxury of being a little looser with that when you're young too. But regardless, what we're talking about the heart here. And I guess my only message would be just, even if it hurts, and life does hurt, life kills, no matter what it takes, it's worth it. Get in it, do all the suffering and all the joy. That's what makes it a true life and a true race that you've participated in, is to engage all of that, the full spectrum of everything that comes with life. And a lot of it is suffering and struggle.
I feel like we were working on
without that, right?
I feel like we were working to understand imminence, and you just helped us understand life.
No, but it's based on the imminent, because the thing is, it is, if we're avoiding struggle, you'll never interact with what's imminent. If you can't run from struggle and say, I am ready to face imminence. You don't get to do both.
You know what else is imminent? The end of this podcast.
Depends what you had for lunch.
The end of this podcast is imminent.
So
Lori, thank you.
Now, so let's wrap it up.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know that it's so hard still.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't, it's the imminence. There's imminence in the after, isn't there?
We all applaud, your story, your reality. All right.
All right. Until next time, like and share our podcast, like and share Strong Island. We like to throw stuff out there. We're not assuming that we have the final word. It's just a word on the way to the final word. That I don't know. I don't think it's going to come from me, but we'll see one of these days. Until next time, farewell.
Adios.